Hi, I'm Brian Lord, president here at Premier Speakers Bureau, and today we've got with us Jon Acuff, top speaker and New York Times bestselling author of several books, including Do Over. So Jon, thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
Now, the book that you've written here is Do Over. Did you have, I know you've written Start and Quitter and some of the other ones, what kind of gave you the idea for Do Over?
Well, a big part of it was just realizing that I was seeing a lot of people that didn't like what they felt stuck at work. And a lot of times the narrative that people have is, well, just go to another job, just jump around. And I see a lot of that. And I realized there's ways to invest and really love the job where you're at right now. And there are some very simple things you can do. And so I recognize that the 70% of Americans who don't like their jobs, the solution isn't start a business. Not everyone's supposed to start a business. We have this huge entrepreneur. Everyone has to start a business. And my background is I worked at Home Depot and Bose and Staples and these big companies where I think you can have big impact on your career. And so I really wanted to teach people that are at a job how to be great at that job, or are looking for a job how to be great at that job, and how to navigate change. Because that's what the book's about, is that you're going to go through changes in your career. Here's how to invest in your career so that regardless of what you're doing it with excellence.
Now you've spoken or been hired to speak for Microsoft and Nissan and Hollander. What are some of the things that people tell you either that they're looking for or that they took away from your presentations?
Well, a lot of times I think people have a good time. They actually laugh. Work is a funny thing, and sometimes people write business books that are so boring, and they tell you have an exciting job, and they're written in a boring way. And so my background, I love to make people laugh, and I love, Chris Rock, the comedian, said there's some things people won't listen to unless they're laughing at the same time. So I use a lot of humor to say, hey, let's talk about these things. Like, here's what's working about work. Here's what's not working about work. Here's how we get better. If you're 23 and you just got to a job, don't you dare go, I'm an expert. I've been out of college for an hour. Where's my dream job? So I can use humor to say to a graduating class or to say to a young group of millennials working at a company, your first job won't be your dream job. You don't even know how to work yet. Your first job's job is to teach you how to have a job. Like, you just went from 3 months off to 8 days off a year. That's a transition. Let's talk about that. So I think a lot of times when I speak at big companies, whether it's Microsoft, whether it's Nissan, there's a lot of people that will say, wow, I didn't expect to laugh as much as that, and I didn't expect to learn like that. And so my approach is to have fun with it. I've been at those, I worked for corporate America for 15 years, and some people use that as a negative term. I think it's a great term. And I remember going to see speakers, and they were boring, and they seemed depressed, or they told a speech that didn't seem like it was fit to my audience. You could tell they had one speech, and regardless of whether they were mom bloggers or executives in the audience, that's what they were going to get. And I hated sitting through those. So now that I get to go do it at other companies, I try to make it personal to where they are and go, okay, you're in the healthcare industry. Here's this challenge with the FDA you're going through. Or you're at Microsoft and you're in the middle of Silicon Valley and people are changing their jobs quickly. Let's talk about that. You're a boomer company trying to work with millennials and you're missing each other. Let's talk about that. So I try to make it personal and I try to make it fun because I've sat in that chair and I hate boring speakers.
Now, you mentioned you talk to millennials. What do you say to boomers?
Well, to boomers, I say admit that things always change. Like, sometimes a boomer forgets that they used to be the millennial. They used to be the one entering the workforce. And then I also tell them, I'll say things like, because when I talk to a millennial audience, I'll say, you got to have somebody 10 years ahead of you that can tell you where the potholes are. You've got to have a mentor. To boomers, I'll say, you better know somebody 10 years behind you or 20 years behind you. Because the challenge for me, I'm 40, so I'm Gen X, but the challenge is that I have to unlearn the old way to do the new way. The millennial doesn't have to unlearn the old way. They grew up in a world where all information is instant. Everything is available, and they see things that I'm just not going to see. So if you're a boomer, you better recognize the talent, the ability, what the millennial generation offers, and plug into that. So I try to get them to understand it's a two-way street, that it's not about how do we fix the millennials, it's about how do we work together on the same kind of problems we're going to face, and what does it really look like. And I try to get boomers not to believe the hype, because the headlines say, millennials are entitled, they're lazy, here's the problem. And there's always elements about that with any generation. So I try to help them understand, here's how the value system has changed. 45% of millennials care more about workplace flexibility than they do salary. So now that you know that information, that gives you a chance to go, okay, so that's why the work from home thing matters. To a millennial, I get to go, hey, don't demand to work from home on your second day of work. You haven't earned anything at that company. You have no equity. Like, don't walk in and go, I'm so mad I've been here for 48 hours and they didn't offer me the chance to work from home. They don't know you. Now, to the boomer, though, I can say, if the only reason you're not letting them work from home is that then you're worried they'll slack off, you should go ahead and fire them right now. If the only thing that makes your employee good is the geography of your building, you have a terrible employee. If the minute they get outside these four walls, they become a terrible loser employee, you hired the wrong person. You should be able to hire people that, whether they're in a coffee shop or in your office, they're able to do good work. So those are some of the things I say.
Now, when you talk about, one of the things in here, and this is a great book, by the way, you can actually see, talking about having kids, I actually have, I think that is either jelly or sucker residue on the side of this book.
Hopefully it's not blood.
Yeah, hopefully not. That would be the downside. But, talking about the career savings account of relationships, skills, character, hustle, what's one thing that you're working on right now? Because I know you say everybody has to have, kind of that career savings account. What's one thing you're personally working on right now out of those four things?
I'm getting a lot more deliberate about my business. I've hired a business coach to come in and ask me some hard questions. The other day he said, hey, show me what happens when $1 goes through your business. Show me how you track it and what happens. And I didn't have a good answer. And he said, okay, show me the difference between Acuff Enterprises, your company, and you. Show me the different goals they have and sometimes where they conflict. And there were a lot of things I hadn't come up with a system for. So one of the things I'm working on, I'd probably apply it to the skills portion, is recognizing I need systems for what I do. A really simple example is I traveled 200 times in the last 3 or 4 years. And I would act like every time was the first time. The night before, I'd get nervous and pack, and it'd take an hour. And then I finally realized if I had a packing list, I could cut that time by 90%. So I sat down, I paid the hour up front to save the 300 hours later, and made a packing list in Evernote. And now every trip I do, I print it out, and I check it off one by one. And 95% of the things I travel with are the same every time. And so then I'll take that and I'll apply it to companies and go, if you're an employee, you are doing repeatable things every week. Do them one time, figure out what they are, and get better at them. Have a bunch of checklists. And that came from talking to an NFL player. I said, you've been in the league for 9 years. The average is 3.2. What do you do differently? And he walked me through his checklist approach. And so, but that's what I'm trying in my own career to do is ask harder questions of my business, get my business in shape, because I also don't want to be a business speaker that has a poorly run business. Yeah. Like I show up on stage and go, here's some business ideas. Meanwhile, like behind Oz, the thing is falling apart. And so I'm trying to make my own business run a lot better so that I can, one, benefit from it, but two, be able to speak to ideas that I've really learned.
One of the things I think is challenging about this book is just that it is a challenge. It's not everything's just handed to you. What's the one way if you wanted to tell someone, here's how to hustle? If someone's like, out of these four things, I really need to work on something, it's hustle. How does somebody go out today and be better at hustle?
Well, there's not a shortcut, like you said. I mean, that's what I think. A lot of times self-help kind of books get lumped in as if you're going to say, just dream it, say it out loud with your words, and then unicorns arrive from nowhere and they just make everything easy. And that's a terrible approach. There's a lot of books like that. And so I'm much more have fun, share it in a personable, funny way, but also go, these are the steps, and the steps are going to take work. Hard work still matters. I think a great thing to do is to have somebody that'll help ask you some hard questions. Somebody that can share, what's really going on with your life. Sometimes we're so close to the picture we can't tell what it really is. And I use a relationship example for that, in that we've all had friends that were dating somebody who was a loser, and they were so close they couldn't tell. And they broke up, and they had some room back, and it was like, why didn't you guys tell me Jim was a loser? And everybody goes, we did. But sometimes we're so close to the situation we're stuck in that we can't see what we really need to do. So just having a friend out to coffee and going, hey, I've got this situation, I want to hustle more, what am I missing? What am I not seeing? I think that's a big part of it. The second thing is start your hustle on something you really care about. The reason people fail at goals, whether they're career related or diet or whatever, is that they pick a goal they don't care about, or they pick a goal they think they should care about. So find something you really enjoy and go, okay, this thing, it's not about limiting myself. It's not about I got to buckle down. I got to do this goal. Like, find something you're really passionate about and tie your hustle to that so that you get that rhythm, that muscle of hustle. And then you can apply it to other things you have to do. But I'll sit down with people that have a list of 10 things they need to do at work, and they'll pick the hardest, worst one and go, I'm going to learn on that. Like, I would never tell you, if you wanted to learn 5 languages, start with Mandarin. Like, I would say, let's start with one that has some similarities to ours and let's build that muscle. And so sometimes people start hustling on the wrong thing that's just boring or it's a drudge, and they go, it's really difficult. The thing I tell people is your distractions are really sexy. Like, Netflix is really sexy. Apps are really sexy. So give your hustle a fighting chance. Pick something you actually like so that you can learn.
Yeah. Now, I know that you are, certainly an expert on, and by the way, I should mention this, Seth Godin, and it's even written in here. I don't know if you can zoom in on this, Eric, but it said, this is the best career book ever written. I'm curious now, how did that come about?
Well, Seth reads the books he endorses. And it came about, he read the book and wrote this really long endorsement and sent it to us, and my wife and I danced around the house. It was just the craziest thing ever. And he said, I don't even know what comes close to second. So for us, it was just an amazing moment of, you sit in your house, you test all your ideas with real companies and real people, but there's always that part of you of, is this going to be helpful? And so it meant the world to us that somebody who spent 30 years having such a big voice said, oh, this thing you're doing, yeah, this is going to help people. And the reality is, I wrote a book called Quitter a few years ago that was about a very specific type of employee, but sometimes businesses think I'm anti-business, like, go quit your job, that's the solution. And that was one idea that was years ago. And so I really wanted to do a career book that celebrated work, that celebrated companies and celebrated employees and said, hey, let's figure this thing out. Like, work can be meaningful. My big thing with this book is that you're going to work for 40 to 60 years of your life. For 40 to 60 hours every week, it should matter. It should have meaning. And great companies know that employees that are engaged do better work. They get more value out of them. The thing that kills me the most is that when I'll talk with companies and they'll go, we don't want our employees to get better because then they might leave, which is you guaranteeing you'll have mediocre employees. That's like dating somebody so ugly so they won't cheat on you.
Yeah.
Like, that's a terrible life plan. Like, I want to find somebody nobody else wants so that they won't leave. Like, that's terrible. You want your employees to be amazing there, because the reality is they're not going to stay there 40 years. The idea of them retiring 40 years later and getting a gold watch, that doesn't exist any longer. So have amazing employees, build amazing employees so that they're amazing while they're there.
Yeah. Now, and kind of where I was going with this is, you being, an expert, as a best-selling author, as, one of the top speakers in America, and but maybe even more than that, you're an expert on 90s culture, rap songs, music, TV, and everything else. If I'll let you pick two, or you can answer both. I couldn't really decide. I was getting some advice on this. Either who would play you from the 90s in the Jon Acuff
Corey Haim.
Corey Haim. Wow, that's too easy.
Don't finish the question, or at least bring a more difficult one.
Oh, well, okay. How about this one? What 90s rapper would do the best?
Rest in peace. Sorry, he's dead as well.
But what 90s rapper would do the best job of converting do-over? And because I was thinking, there's so much, you talk about jump bump in yours. Who would do the best rap song based on do-over?
I will say we dropped a mixtape for this book. There's a do-over mixtape that a DJ out in Compton did.
So really?
We have. I don't know if you have any other speakers that it's on SoundCloud. If you go to SoundCloud and get the do-over, it's parts of the book mixed with old school hip hop, current stuff. But I would probably say that's a tough one. Maybe Rob Bass, because he's fun and he was a good DJ. I think I'd say Rob Bass if I had. I was gonna say LL Cool J, but then I don't know. I'd go with Rob Bass.
Okay, that's sound. That's sound. We'll go.
Or Run DMC. Oh man,
there's so many good. Now, in preparing for this, we did get some questions from LinkedIn and Facebook.
Great.
So, interviewing Jon Acuff. So first, Armand from actually right here in Nashville. How do you push your teammates / coworkers / clients to participate in their own rescues and knock their fears out by taking action against setbacks?
Yeah, well, the big thing is figuring out what their currency is. Everybody has their own personal currency, the thing they care about. And that's why things like strength finders or DISC or personality tests are so helpful, because we've all had times where we tried to get somebody to buy into our currency and we forgot they have a different one. I had a manager once who loved long, like 90-minute weekly reviews, like covered like 10 pages, and it was this emotional thing. And I got a new manager through a reorg, because that's what happens at companies.
Yeah.
And I brought that 10-page review, and he looked at it for 30 seconds and said, okay, great, I'll see you next week. And I was crushed. I thought, oh, I haven't done it right. And what often happens is when somebody has a different currency than you amplify yours. It's like when an American goes to Italy and somebody doesn't understand English, so they go, what if I talked louder? Like, it's not a volume issue. So I came back with an even longer one. Same thing happened. And I had to recognize what he valued were, he wanted to know the 3 fires that were going on that I needed his help with. The 3 things I couldn't do on my own. And so I brought a single sheet of paper. He looked at it and said, this is great. Here's what we should do. And it was a great meeting. So when you're trying to help teammates or other people, you can't use your form of motivation to motivate them. It's like speaking a different language. So it's your job through empathy, through figuring out what they really care about, to tie what you're trying to get done to a motivation that actually motivates them. Motivation isn't one size fits all. There's some people that are really motivated by money. There's other people that they're so glad what they did generates money, but it's not their first motivation. They love being in an office because they're surrounded by people. They like the interaction. They like putting together a meeting. They like seeing stuff happen. So the big thing is making sure you understand their source of motivation, their fuel, if you will, and then tying that to what you're trying to do.
Next question from Drew in Jinja, Uganda. How did you develop your attitude of generosity, and how has that played out in your life?
I would say I'm still developing it. I would say like my natural bent is like, give me everything. So it's not, I don't want to ever pretend like I wake up and like, I'm just generous. It's just yay. Like I would love that was my, so I think it's like anything else. You have to be deliberate. You have to, put aside the things that are just for you. I think part of it was realizing that it's way more fun to help other people than it is to help yourself. And sometimes self-help, I'll read self-help books and they're so selfish and they're so one-sided about just me getting better. And I've done that before, and it's a really boring, kind of thin existence. And the other side, I've said, wow, like organizations like Thistle Farms in Nashville, I can take my platform and shine a light on the work they're doing in a way that they'll never be able to do themselves, because I've got this fun platform on Twitter. I've got 275,000 Twitter followers. I can tell them about Thistle Farms. And we ended up selling $65,000 worth of candles to help them do great work in Nashville. So, and again, it comes back to the question of how do you motivate somebody? That motivates me. So a lot of times I try to make sure that the way I'm living with my generosity is fit to what I'm good at. There's this sense of that generosity only means like building somebody a house, or generosity only means this thing. And then you go do something you're terrible at. I would be terrible at building somebody a set of stairs at their house if they had a flood. Like they would die on those stairs. I'm a terrible carpenter, but I can help somebody write their resume because I'm a writer, or I can help, them figure out their branding or their platform. So I also try to find ways to apply my strength to their need.
Mm-hmm. All right, 2 more questions.
Yeah.
Juliana in Austin, Texas. When you, Jon Acuff, get into a rut, how do you get out of one?
Well, a lot of it is I'll try to do something outside of the task I'm trying. So if I'm stuck in a rut with business, I'll go jog. And it kind of shakes me out of the framework. Sometimes we try to clinch our way out of a rut, and that just drives us deeper into it. So even something as simple as taking a 10-minute walk. Playing with my kids for a few minutes. Music helps me get out of a rut. I think everybody should have their own soundtrack. So for me, I'll listen to music. I'll go watch a movie, or I'll come up with a reward system. A friend challenged me on that about after a day of writing having a reward. And so that can be something small. It can be something like you go to a movie by yourself. So those are a few things. And then I just remember I've been in ruts before, and I always get out of them. Like I've never been in like a 10-year rut. Mm-hmm. And so I try to remember what were the things that helped me get out of them before, and also have the patience that a rut is part of the process. Like Seth Godin always talks about the dip, that everything goes through a dip. So I try to make sure I don't feel shame about the rut, because that doesn't help. Like you never get out of a rut by shaming yourself out.
All right. And last one. So Brian's from Salina, Texas. How does Jon keep up that amazing hair?
I don't know that. I mean, it's super gray. If you look at photos from me from like 5 years ago, it was dark like mocha. And now it is super. So I don't know. I get a haircut every 3 weeks. Somebody asked me the other day what my skin facial care like process was, and I was like, water, soap. Like I guess maybe other speakers you have in here have like. Once you get to a certain level, it's like you only use stuff from Australia, and it's made of pearl. I don't know. So yeah, I'd say I get haircuts. I think most of the times my hair looks like a 1989 youth minister. So I don't think I have them. I think I have very normal hair. I know, like being cool isn't one of the things in my toolkit. Like I like to be funny. I'm not tall, so no one will ever feel like I have an imposing stage presence. I'm okay with that. Like I recognize that. I'm gonna play to my strengths. So I don't know if hair is one of them though. I think it'd be more like how does Jon, take care of his eyebrow? And I'd be like, well, you have to cut right here because otherwise you have an eyebrow. Yeah. That's probably helpful.
Question, John from Jon and Brentwood.
Yeah,
how do you
exactly.
take care of eyebrows?
Yeah.
And that's the answer. So. Well, great. Well, Jon, thank you so much for coming on. For you event planners, definitely make sure to check out Jon's page on our website, and also make sure to click through and watch all the interviews. So, Jon, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.